Good morning. Welcome to my garden again. I have not been online. I have not been making videos. I have not been editing videos. I've barely been in my garden at all this late summer season. And to be honest, I'm a little bit burnt out from life. It's been quite an eventful end of summer. My toddler hurt his leg. Work has been picking up. It's just been an intense season. So I really have not been spending any time in the garden. I've done a little bit of harvesting. We've had tons of peppers this year, and I kind of started to pick up some of my garden chores again. And then the biggest pests in my garden are not bugs, they are my dogs. Because my dogs have rummaged through every pepper plant and picked off every single bell pepper that they could find and any moderate to sweet pepper they could find. So I am pepperless, and that's kind of what my whole garden is about. I have a lot of things growing in here, but peppers are really what I love to grow. So I am struggling to find the inspiration to spend a lot of time out here. That being said, I've really enjoyed watching this garden really do its thing this year. It's been more hands-off than it really ever has for me. In past years, it's been a lot more hands-on, making sure the plants are doing okay, building up my soil, really feeding my plants. This year, I just simply have not had the time to baby my garden. So my garden has been a thrive on your own. It's raining enough this year where my plants are getting a little bit of nutrition from the rain, obviously a lot of moisture. And all I really do is come through and make sure things aren't looking totally wonky, falling over from wind, that kind of a thing. And then, picking out plants that are dead or diseased. So really minimal effort this year. So I can't complain on that. We've had great weather that kind of supports that hands-off nature in the garden this year. So while I have pretty much nothing to harvest right now, there are some fun things going on in the garden that I can show you, and really in the next couple weeks the whole garden's going away. Our first frost comes late October, and this is a really weird year where some nights are getting really cold, like mid-40s, which feels early for this year, but also like for today the highs are high 70s. So it's really hard to tell what we're going to get in terms of frost this year, because it's not really an extra cold year or an extra warm year. So these are my Egyptian walking onions, and earlier in the season, this is my first year growing them, I got a bunch of bulblets on top of these and they all fell over, and it took them a really long time to start to regrow, and I honestly thought I picked too many, I had done something wrong. So I left this place pretty much blank in terms of some seeds. There is some kale and some smaller plants in here that I'm gonna have to move. I topped it up with some new soil, and it seemed to absolutely kickstart these plants again. So maybe it was just low nutrition, I don't know, maybe I just needed to be more patient. But these are looking fantastic. Hopefully they get more bulblets. I actually ordered more, so I need to find another patch. I'd like it to be an end cap like this for another batch of those, and I will let those ones go full stalk, mature, have the bulblet, drop, and have more. I think that's the way to go. I need to let them really have, a run or two of reseeding themselves so that they can get really established, because this is triple the amount, at least, maybe even 4 times the amount that I started with last fall. So in 1 year, this has really taken over, which is exactly what I wanted. This garden bed behind the Egyptian walking onions is very bumpy for 2 reasons. One, this is where I let my toddler dig as he pleases, so there's holes everywhere, which is totally fine. But also, I'm realizing that this soil in this bed and other beds, which I need to maybe make a video on and also do some work on, is getting hydrophobic. The soil is hydrophobic, meaning the top of the soil will get wet with contact, but if you stick your finger in a couple inches, it's completely dry. So it's not actually absorbing a lot of water where the roots need it most. So I dug up a lot of this and soaked it with my hose, getting more of the layers wet basically reteaching it to soak up water, and creating pockets where the water can pool underneath the surface. What really needs to happen is I need to feed the soil and add more organic matter to it that will also absorb the water. A lot of my soil in my beds are getting hydrophobic this year. Again, hands-off gardening also causes some of those issues, so partially that's my fault. The peas are doing fantastic along the back. They're all about 2 feet tall, so that's a nice fall gift where the cool season brings in some of my favorite plants like peas. My hot pepper patch, which is Buenamullata peppers, Carolina Reapers, which you can see a couple are changing color right here. Very, very, very excited about that. Behind this mint is jalapenos, and on the other side is sugar rush peach peppers. My hot peppers have done really, really well. Some of my plants that were really, really massive last year are not as massive this year. So I think I might end up, when I take these pepper plants out for the season, I might try to overwinter a couple of them. I tried that last year and I wasn't even sure that they had made them. I ended up not even watering them at all, and they do require a little bit of work over winter. Anyways, I might try that again because I think that's a fun experiment. But I think I'm going to end up moving this bed to an entirely different location and or expanding some of my garden using this bed. I like this metal bed that I bought, and it was pretty cheap. So I think it's a really good example of like a cheap bed alternative. I just need to do some work to move it and fill up the soil a little bit more. But man, this pepper season has been really, really great. I'm really excited with all the things that I grew. My hot pepper patch, which is Buenamullata peppers, Carolina Reapers, which you can see a couple are changing color right here. Very, very, very excited about that. Behind this mint is jalapenos, and on the other side is sugar rush peach peppers. My hot peppers have done really, really well. Some of my plants that were really, really massive last year are not as massive this year. So I think I might end up, when I take these pepper plants out for the season, I might try to overwinter a couple of them. I tried that last year and I wasn't even sure that they had made them. I ended up not even watering them at all, and they do require a little bit of work over winter. Anyways, I might try that again because I think that's a fun experiment. But I think I'm going to end up moving this bed to an entirely different location and or expanding some of my garden using this bed. I like this metal bed that I bought, and it was pretty cheap. So I think it's a really good example of like a cheap bed alternative. I just need to do some work to move it and fill up the soil a little bit more. But man, this pepper season has been really, really great. I'm really excited with all the things that I grew. The wind is coming in from behind me, so it's a little bit gnarly in terms of wind direction and hair. But behind me is my goth garden. So there's a lot of dark foliage that turned out really good and really, really low maintenance this year. My dahlias are looking rough, of course. Some things just don't make it through the whole season, but I'm hoping that comes back. I'm really unsure. A lot of my purple basil has gone to seed, which I'm thrilled about. I would love it if it did reseed for next year. It's just less things going on here, more dark foliage, but also the bees really like basil flowers. So that's fantastic. And then behind me, this elephant ear plant has gotten so massive. It's actually smaller right now than it has been because a lot of the leaves have fully matured. But oh my goodness, that plant has been massive and such a showstopper. I want to get 2 of them next year. I want to put them in my front yard. Like, I'm obsessed with elephant ear plants like this. And yeah, it was super, super tall. And then back here is a cuckoozy plant. I just simply can't get rid of my vining plants, whether I want to or not. There's always one somewhere. So I left that there. There is a massive one on the back side. I can actually show you if you want. Hello. It's just massive. And there's a couple other smaller fruits on there. But a fun thing that I'm not going to maintain and probably won't even eat, but such a fun thing to have in the garden. And then behind me are some of my other pepper plants, which have been ravaged by my dogs. which I'm working on some training so that doesn't happen in the future. I'm trying my best. When they are given a little bit, they take a lot. So these are my Pippin's Golden Honey, which have been a nice snacking one, nothing too crazy. Some people really find those to be their favorite. I didn't find that they were my favorite pepper, but they were certainly good producers. So I'll probably grow 2 more plants again next year. The Advarsky and the Carmen F1 are pretty similar to me in terms of uses in the kitchen, just, you know, regular stir fry bell pepper style. The Big Jim was a good pepper. I didn't actually like the flavor of it when it was fully ripe, but I loved them as a green, thin, long pepper, and it was used in my case, in my cooking application, the exact same way you would a Cubanelle, like a stuffing pepper or a quick chop kind of pepper, just really, really crunchy, thick walled pepper. I'm probably going to continue to add that one to the garden. I have a lot of clips of my toddler coming to my garden and taking a giant crunchy bite out of a pepper, and 80% of the time it's a Big Jim pepper because they're at the front of the garden bed, they're long, they're bright green, and it's the easiest one for him to grab, but he always seems to go for the crunchiest Big Jim pepper. So I'll grow those again next year for sure. This year was the year of the bell pepper. I put so many bell pepper plants in my garden this year, where last year I had 3 or 4, and they really don't produce that many, I find, compared to hot peppers where they're usually smaller on the plant and they'll have 30 on a plant sometimes if you really aren't paying attention. For example, my pequeño plant right here, you can see all of those yellow peppers on there. Those are all ready to harvest, versus a bell pepper like the ones behind me, there's usually 1, 2, maybe 3. So in this case, you know, like little ones like this that take a really long time to mature. So I planted a ton, wanting to put a big dent in my grocery bill for peppers because we eat a ton of them. And these giant monster bell peppers were incredible. There's actually another type called a Chinese giant red bell pepper that did fantastic as well. And about 2 months ago, maybe 3 at this point, I went on to a couple different seed websites, and anything that was giant bell pepper, giant sweet pepper, anything of that nature, I bought seed packets for. So I'm not doing any tiny bell peppers or average bell peppers next year. I have ones called like a coral bell, the California Wonders. Those just don't perform well enough at all in my experience. My tried and true is called the yellow monster bell pepper from Baker Creek. It outperforms any other bell pepper in terms of size, quantity, speed of production. It feels like, at least, but that's what's majority of what's behind me. And my pepper plants did have a season, or you know, a month of disease, but they all bounced back once the plants were cleaned up. So they're pretty hardy in terms of issues. Behind me right now, they look ravaged. Maybe not so much in the camera, because my dogs keep running through here. Again, I didn't realize my dogs were the biggest pests in my garden, but they are. For a while, I just couldn't figure out why my plants were getting knocked over by the wind, or why some things looked maybe like they had a little crunch out of them, or a munch, or a pepper would fall. Thought maybe the wind, because the wind really rips through here sometimes. But it was my dogs. So 2 plants over here got fully knocked over and will die in the next couple days because they got ripped out by my dogs. Otherwise, it's mostly just my dogs having a nice, nutritious snack. But they're still doing well. It's very unlikely I'll get too much out of these plants at this point because the peppers that were growing there are no longer on there. So hopefully I'll keep them still in. I still refuse to pull out my pepper plants. I will give them the entire season to grow. So they still live here. They're still doing fine. So bell peppers did fantastic. Hot peppers did fantastic this year. I'm very happy about that. Now, something that did not do well this year at all, and this is I think, a universal experience, or at least certainly on the East Coast. We had so much rain early season that things were oversaturated, mucky, and tomato plants in particular suffered the most. The rain knocked out so many tomato plants and got disease everywhere. It seemed like nobody had a fantastic harvest unless they had backup plants or they were able to really, really care for their plants and be outside every day and, you know, do whatever types of protection that they could. I was not one of those people. I got a handful of very beautiful tomatoes, and that's about it. And then I ripped out those tomato plants. I was done. So I haven't had tomatoes really all season at all. The ones that I did like having were the really big slicer yellow tomatoes. And then I had some purple ones that I really like because of the color, but they weren't particularly my favorite flavor. And then I had some really, really lovely Roma style tomatoes this year because I did want to learn to can, which I really didn't get to do except for once. But I made a big batch of homemade ketchup this year and it was fantastic. It was so savory and almost like a ketchup barbecue sauce. We used it on everything. So next year I think I'm really only gonna stick to Roma style tomatoes. I might add one slicer of, you know, probably a yellow variety, but I really just I don't want to spend a lot of space and time on tomatoes next year. I really don't think I have it in me. Couple things on this side of the garden. My blueberry bushes are looking rough and I'm really trying to solve that this fall while it's cool right before it freezes. But this one in particular is doing rough, so I might need to pot it and figure out a better solution than in this bed. But also behind it, where normally my flower patch is, none of my flowers did well past the halfway point of the summer when it got too hot and suddenly really dry. It went from really, really wet to really, really dry. So I'm trying to figure that out, and I might just put some berries in here and make that more of a berry patch rather than a flower patch next year. We'll see. And then my green stalks, which I have 4 of, did pretty good this year, but I neglected to feed them very much and add nutrition back into the soil. So I didn't really expect a whole lot because I really didn't want to put a lot of time and energy and resources into them. But flowers did fantastic in here, and then my strawberries kicked butt like they always do. It is such a joy to have tiny, super, super flavorful strawberries in our garden all the time, and my toddler freaks out when there's a bright red strawberry. It's just a joy. I highly recommend it, and I'll probably do a second whole tower of strawberries next year because we just simply can't have enough. Now, some things in my garden this year really went well and some really, really just did not do so well. I think that's a nice summary of my whole year in general, personally, you know, and garden wise. It's been such an up and down year, but I really do feel like the things that I've wanted the most, like the peppers and having beautiful flowers and coming outside and smelling all the aromas of all the herbs growing in every direction, having, you know, arches completely filled with mostly green, but certainly a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, a lot of things going on. Like, this year was really, really good, and I needed a hands-off garden year. It's been so wild. It's been a little chaotic. Some weeks have felt like months. Some months have felt like years. But it's been really, really good to be out here and see things continue to grow. And even when something doesn't go well, it really feels like the flower patch next to that area doubles in size when something doesn't go well, as if to like fill in that space and say, don't worry, I got this, that's mine now. And I'm perfectly thrilled to have things in the garden take over and really fill in those spaces. It just feels like the garden is alive and taking care of itself so much, and I get to be its caretaker, but I'm certainly not its owner. I'm certainly sometimes not in control of every single thing that happens in this garden. So I think overall I really can't complain about this garden year, and I'm excited to get to the end of the season so I can start planning for next year and make my short list of goals for next year. setting goals in the garden is one of my favorite things to do, both short-term and long-term. I like to have annual goals, so this year was the year of the bell pepper for sure. And then I expanded a lot of our fruit plants for, honestly, long-term gain. I really didn't get extra blueberries this year. I got a little bit more than last year, but I brought baby plants to plan for future years where we can really expand our fruit intake, especially with a child in the house. And then, some things were more trial, like trying to get more vining flowers in the garden that weren't passion fruit, because passion fruit took over my garden. That needed to be eradicated. But I tried some things this year that were kind of goals, more experiments. But next year I think I want to focus more on some vining fruit. I'd like to focus in on melons. I think that's a really fun experiment. And I'd like to expand my garden in one direction by, pushing out some of the space that I already have available. And then the two other goals I think I want to set for myself for next year is, one, I'd like to get rid of some of the mulch. It gets mushy certainly during rainy seasons, but also I think I'd like to do some art projects, both with my toddler, who's a very artsy kiddo, and also expand some of my hobbies, because I see some really cool glasswork. I see some cool just crafty projects I think I could do, and make some brick pavers or just a hodgepodge of kind of a hard surface to walk on. So some sort of replacement for the mulch would be great. And then my second goal is something new, and it's in the back of my property, which I've never shown before, but we just made a whole path for a quad to make figure eights and zoom through our forest, which is farther away from my garden. It's completely disconnected, but I want to make some patches back there of flowers, which will kind of serve as almost a cottage garden vibe. I think it'll bring more pollinators to the garden. It'll use a really nice shady it's mostly shaded spot, but I'm just so excited about that space. The soil is so soft back there. I think flowers will really thrive, and reseeding would be pretty easy back there, because it's not as windy back there, but it will hold enough water to keep some seeds active. So I'm thinking foxglove, I'm thinking tall flowers, I'm thinking really smelly flowers like marigolds. Oh gosh, I've been really obsessed with my marigolds this year. Some kind of low-lying ones in the entryway. I definitely just have a vision. So I'd like to do some of that next year. I think that would be really lovely. And I'll probably start some this fall, because I have bulbs that I really need to get in the ground. So I think some of those deserve to go back there. Overall, it's been quite a chaotic 2025. We have just a few weeks left of our garden season. As you can see, things are still very green, which is lovely. The weather has not really cooperated this year and has definitely created some loss in terms of things that I was expecting to bring into the house this year, but lots of things have done well. And while I troubleshoot and plan for next year, which happens every year because no garden year is perfect, I'm really looking forward to all the things that I can expand and try next year, and kind of reimagine what I want to do and what I want to focus on. So if you have any tips for dealing with dogs in the garden, besides building fences, because I really don't want a fence in my garden, I love it open and accessible to my family and friends, let me know your thoughts. I really appreciate it. But thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you soon. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.